a new fall tradition for me, and maybe one for you. One of the best things I've made with chestnuts. This is potage à marrons, French chestnut soup. Or maybe it's Italian chestnut soup. You could probably call it either. Here's what we're going to cover. Different types of chestnuts, very important. Boiling, steaming, both of those referring to how to peel them, and then we'll make the chestnut soup. First things first, the type of chestnut is important. Most of the chestnuts that are available commercially, if you are a chef at a restaurant or if you're just going to a store, are going to be on the left hand side. Those are Chinese chestnuts. They're much smaller, generally speaking, than Italian chestnuts, which are on the right and are definitely my preference if you can find them. Bigger chestnuts mean more meat, bigger yield, and they're usually easier to peel. Trader Joe's has chestnuts for $6.99. Look at those things. The other chestnuts are usually about $12.99, and that is a screaming deal if they're not sold out. Call in advance. Methods for peeling. First one is boiling chestnuts. This is going to be similar to roasting. We're going to just score the chestnuts and we're putting them down. The flat side of the chestnut is always on the cutting board. We don't put the round side down because you have to apply a little pressure, kind of like with acorns, to get through the shell. And it would be easy to cut yourself pretty bad. So just be careful. Respect the nut. Then we're going to put them in some boiling water, boil them at a hard boil for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then I'm going to test their doneness to see if a paper clip goes through and it's nice and soft, so we'll take them out. That paper clip stuck through a wine cork is a great little kitchen hack too. I use it as a thermometer. If you have questions, leave a comment on that. Now, when we're going to peel them, this is another little kind of secret trick. Keep them warm while you peel them. You can see not all the chestnuts are out. We're leaving some in the water to keep them warm because that's going to make it easier for that test, which is kind of similar to the skin on the inside of an acorn, to come off. And sometimes these can kind of stick on there and it can kind of be a pain. And you can see they're not perfect. That is what you're trying to get off. And these are a little bitter, the inner skin, but if it's not perfect, as you'll see, some of mine aren't perfect, it's totally fine. That's the great thing about this recipe, is that it's really flexible. Look how they get stuck in some of the crenulations there. It can get kind of frustrating, but don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all going to get pureed. Okay, now my choice and what I would suggest that you start off with, or if you haven't tried it, you have to try steaming them. We're just going to get a pan hot, cast iron, or my Kehoe carbon pan is great here. Add a little bit of water and cook them on high heat for 5 minutes. Look at how nice those open up. And now you'll see when I peel them, they just peel like a dream. Well, about 90% of them. You always have some problem children, it seems like. Just look at that. There's something just strangely pleasing about a chestnut that peels perfectly. And you might want to get a towel because they could be a little warm. But you just keep going until all your chestnuts are peeled. And I'm getting a pretty good success rate with these. Then I'm going to show you another version that my friend Clay Bowers does, which is he takes the chestnuts and he actually cuts them in half. And then we're going to do basically the same thing we did before. You can see one cut slices and the other cut goes directly down through the whole chestnut. Because you're not really ever going to use the whole chestnut unless you're making Marrons glacé, which is kind of an advanced pastry technique and absolutely delicious. Same thing here. Put them in the pan, cook them for 5 minutes or even a little less because they're cut in half, and let's see how these peel. Pop! They're peeling like a dream. If you overcook the chestnuts, they can be really hard to get out of the shell, especially if all you did was score them. It can be trying to get like mashed potatoes out of a shell. So that's why basically we're just par cooking these here. And that is kind of what you want. You can see not all of mine are perfect, but they're good enough and they're going to get pureed, so it wouldn't matter anyway. Okay, now the chestnut soup. This is a really simple soup based on kind of a classic French recipe from the book I Know How to Cook. There's only a few ingredients. A lot of this stuff is optional. You don't have to add an herb bouquet here. I have some bay, a couple cloves, a little bit of fresh thyme. That's optional, but it is very good. And we're going to add a little bit of onion. And it's really important here. The chestnuts have a mild flavor. Make darn sure to cook the onion way down until it's completely cooked. Otherwise, it can fight with the chestnut a little bit. And that's kind of, generally speaking, always with onions. Then we had a little bit of sweet wine. That was a splash of marsala, or you could use sherry. Then we're just going to add chicken stock. Or you could add some bone broth like I made last week. Then we add the herb bouquet and the chestnuts. And now we just cook them until the chestnuts can be until they can be mashed against the side of the pot with a spatula. And then all we do is puree them up and make sure to take the bouquet out. I have pureed an herb sachet in the Vitamix. It's not, you don't want that to happen. And kind of like magic here, the soup will get nice and velvety thick. Chestnuts are really starchy, so just look at that. Velvety, smooth, and creamy. And we haven't even added any cream yet. It's so good. They kind of taste like if potatoes were crossed with nuts and they were sweet. And they can take a little sweetness as well as savoriness. So I add a little bit of maple syrup. We'll add some warm spices in a little bit. They're really just a fascinating flavor. There's a little bit of nutmeg, just a suggestion of nutmeg, as I like to say. And then we'll add some heavy cream. If you want it a little bit looser, you could add a whole cup. That was just half a cup for about 4 cups of stock, plenty of salt. And just like just about every recipe that I've shown you guys, we taste and season again, mix, taste and season until it tastes perfect to you. One of the biggest tips that I give home cooks all the time. And just look at that. Velvety, creamy, not too loose, not too thick, and you can adjust the texture and the viscosity to your preference. But again, tasting and seasoning is the key. Okay, you can play with it a little bit. Caramelized onions can make a nice little layer of flavor if you want to caramelize the onions first. Basically, just do the same thing there. Italians love to mix porcini with their chestnuts because porcini grow symbiotically with the chestnut trees. So that's another cool variation you can do too. All these recipes are on my website. There's a link at the top of the video description. And I really appreciate when you guys visit my website, interact, leave a comment. Really appreciate that. It's a way that you can support me. Thanks for watching.